When you think of classic horror, you probably picture something loud, colorful, and a little stupid.
No!
Freddy cracking one-liners,
No.
Jason getting zapped back to life by lightning for like the 5th time, or Chucky being Chucky.
You stupid you filthy Did you with me?
These movies knew exactly what they were. Silly, over the top, and proud of it. But somewhere along the way, horror stopped laughing at itself. Modern horror just feels different. Not worse, not better, just different. The camp, the cheesiness, that late night VHS energy, it's mostly gone. Back in the day, horror wasn't afraid to be fun. Movies like Evil Dead 2, Reanimator, Fright Night, and Child's Play balanced scares with personality. They were chaotic, gross, funny, and somehow still terrifying. Now compare that to something like The Witch or Hereditary. Both amazing films, but you're not exactly laughing or quoting one-liners afterward. You're sitting there in silence, rethinking your life choices. Classic horror was like a roller coaster. Ups, downs, screams, and laughs. Modern horror is more like a slow elevator ride into emotional despair. Back then, horror was the cinematic equivalent of a haunted house. Goofy, scary, and gloriously over the top. Even when it was dumb, it was memorable. You had practical effects splattering across the screen, and plots that made zero sense, but somehow worked. Like a dream demon who kills you if you nap? Sure. A psychic girl fighting Jason? Why not? A guy who solves a puzzle box and accidentally summons BDSM demons from another dimension? Totally normal. Horror used to be a playground. Creativity over logic. In Friday the 13th, the monster is Jason. Simple. In Smile, or It Follows, the monster is depression, guilt, or grief. Don't get me wrong, I love those movies. They've got clever writing and deeper meanings, but I think a lot of newer horror wants to be serious art. Sometimes it feels like horror's trying too hard to be deep and forgets to be fun. Like, remember when the scariest part of The Exorcist was a kid puking green soup and spinning her head around? Now the scariest part is realizing it's an allegory for generational trauma. So what happened? Why did we trade rubber masks and fake blood for trauma, metaphors, and minimalism? The truth is, horror fans got smarter. We've seen the tropes a million times.
Watch out, Jamie, you know he's around.
The jump scares, the final girls, the twist endings. So directors started looking for new ways to disturb us. Instead of a guy with a machete, we get grief, guilt, and trauma. Monsters we can't stab back. And that's smart, it's evolution. But it also means horror lost a bit of its spark. We lost that goofy charm that made movies like Sleepaway Camp or Killer Clowns from Outer Space so lovable. That's how we got stuff like Get Out, Midsommar, and The Babadook. Horror with homework. And I love those too, they've got something to say. But they're not fun in the same way. They trade blood for symbolism and camp for commentary. It's not about watching chaos, it's about feeling dread. And honestly, that's awesome. Horror should evolve. But I do miss the wink at the camera energy that made you go, okay, that was insane, but I loved it. Now everything's quiet, slow, symbolic, like you're watching an art student's nightmare thesis. Beautifully made. But sometimes I find myself missing that messy fun. Classic horror also looked different. It had texture. You could feel the latex, the syrupy fake blood, the smoke machines running overtime. It looked grimy. It was grainy, sweaty, full of shadows and handheld chaos. It felt dangerous, like you were watching something you weren't supposed to. Look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's raw and ugly, like a documentary that stumbled into hell. You can almost smell the sweat and dust through the screen. Everything feels so real and uncomfortable, not because of the big budget effects, but because of how cheap it was. That low budget grime made it believable. You're not watching actors, you're watching people who look like they haven't showered in days. running for their lives under a Texas sun that feels like 200 degrees. It's horror stripped down to the bones. No metaphors, no glossy camera moves, no clean storytelling. Just fear, noise, sweat, and chaos. Even when newer movies try to be gritty, you could still tell that the lighting setup was perfect, and everyone's makeup was reapplied between takes.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Texas Chainsaw felt like the camera crew barely made it out alive. Then you've got A Nightmare on Elm Street, which did the total opposite of Texas Chainsaw. Where Chainsaw was grimy and grounded, Elm Street was pure nightmare fuel. Literally. It wasn't trying to feel real, it wanted to feel impossible. Freddy Krueger didn't just stab you, he turned your fears into surreal little horror shows. People got dragged into their beds, sucked into TVs, turned into human puppets. Every kill felt like it came straight out of a fever dream. That's what made it special. It wasn't just gore for shock value, it was imagination. Every frame had this wild creativity that you don't really see in modern horror anymore. It wasn't afraid to look weird, or even goofy. One minute you're terrified, the next you're laughing. And that balance is why it worked. And the practical effects, they were pure insanity. The rotating bedroom, the geysers of blood, the melting faces, all done by hand. All tactile, all real. And that stuff sticks with you because your brain knows it's actually there. It's not pixels and rendering, it's latex, smoke, and clever camera tricks. Movies like The Nun, The Conjuring, or Smile, they're technically perfect, but maybe too perfect. No grain, no grit, no washed out chaos, which can look amazing, but sometimes it's too polished, too safe. And then there's the villains. Old horror loved its monsters, gave them names, faces, and personalities. They were the entire brand. Modern horror, it's more conceptual.
Fortnite.
The monster's often invisible, or it's an idea. The fear comes from the unseen, a metaphor, a mood, or a feeling. Which works, but you can't really slap that on a t-shirt or chant its theme at Halloween Horror Nights. Sure, we've got Art the Clown, who's basically holding it down for the old school crowd, but beyond that, not many new faces have joined the Mount Rushmore of horror. The villains used to be the main attraction. Now the focus is usually on the emotional journey, which is cool, but come on. Sometimes I just want a guy in a mask doing dramatic head tilts. We used to have characters that anchored the genre. Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, Chucky. Now it's more like the weird shape in the corner. So yeah, horror's changed because the tone changed. It grew up. It started taking itself seriously. And in doing that, it kinda lost the campfire story energy that made it feel like a party. Old horror felt like it wanted to entertain you.
I'm a leprechaun, me dear.
Modern horror feels like it just wants to haunt you. And both are great, they just hit different nerves. But personally, I really miss when horror could be both.
Drop dead.
When it could make you scream and laugh in the same breath. When scary didn't necessarily mean somber. Because somewhere between the goofy blood fountains and the A24 dread, there's the sweet spot. The reason we fell in love with horror in the first place.